Good afternoon, fellow Ugandans and members of international community. I am known by the names Aroma Patrick, presidential candidate 2026-2031. Today, I am starting a series on corruption, on policies. Different policies. I'll be addressing different policies, providing alternative policies, and giving the way forward for Uganda. And I would also encourage other presidential candidates, those who want to contest and to be president of this country, to comprehensively read the different policies governing Uganda currently, and they should also be able to provide alternatives. So for today, I'm going to talk about corruption. Why corruption? Recently, Uganda has witnessed the international outcry, the national outcry on increased practices of corruption in our country. We have seen the Speaker of Parliament sanctioned by the UK government, and which I should appreciate. I do appreciate the sanction of the UK government on the basis that the UK government contributes a lot of money towards different developmental projects within Uganda. And their contributions are meant to benefit the vulnerable Ugandans. So they are right to get concerned when corruption is getting out of hand within this country. I also appreciate the different voices within Uganda that really came up to condemn the corruption. Now, the background is very simple. When NRM came into power, they had 10 programs. Out of the 10, number 7 was fighting corruption. The NRM government even established the office of the IGG in 1986. Can you imagine? The office of the IGG was established in 1986 to curb down corruption. But along the way, there are so many reports which shows that corruption has really increased in Uganda. The Global Index report, Transparency International reports, the Auditor General's report, and even the Inspector General of Government reports shows that corruption has really increased in our country. What went wrong? And everyone is asking, why has corruption increased so much within our country? Is it a question of policy? Is it a question of policy implementation? Is it a question of attitude? Have we resigned our attitude towards corruption? Is it the reluctance of Uganda? This is very serious, fellow Ugandans. Corruption has affected this country in very many ways. Number one, corruption affects service delivery. Ugandans are not getting services as a result of corruption. Look at the example of Karamoja. The iron sheets meant for vulnerable people in Karamoja. how the top officials in government diverted these iron sheets. So the person down there does not get services because of corruption. Number two, corruption affects distribution of wealth. 1% of Ugandans are now owning the entire country because of corruption. And this is very, very serious. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Ugandans, wealth distribution in this country, if you look at it and if you analyze from 1986 up to date, those who have primitively accumulated wealth because of corruption, you will discover that different regions of this country have been affected. Number three, corruption makes us ask several questions. Who is the government working for? What is the government for? The government is supposed to work for the people. But corruption cannot allow. The government now ends up working for 1% of the population. The government ends up working for the corrupt because the corrupt has access to everything. Number three, corruption breeds poor governance. It causes a breakdown in the rule of law. A very corrupt country cannot allow the rule of law to take roots and thrive. Number five, equality. Corruption affects equality. And yet, the law says all citizens are equal before the law. But the corrupt turns it upside down. Number five, the poor infrastructure in this country. Corruption affects the poor infrastructure, particularly roads, education, health, the youth. So corruption in this country needs to be addressed. And every presidential contender and all the leaders aspiring for different leadership positions, as MPs, as LC5s, as councillors, we must address corruption. If we don't address corruption, then this country is doomed. Because right now corruption has reached unprecedented levels. If you look at the 2015-2016 Global Competitiveness Report published by the World Economic Forum, it has ranked Uganda as a very corrupt country. The East African Bribery Index report completely has ranked Uganda in a very, very bad light. So, ladies and gentlemen, the World Bank defines corruption as the abuse of public office for private gain. That is the World Bank. But the Anti-Corruption Act of 2009 of Uganda defines corruption, defines the scope of corruption in very many manifestations. One, solicitation, offering and giving an acceptance of any goods of money of monetary value for personal gain. It defines corruption as embezzlement, bribery, nepotism, influence peddling, fraud, forgery, causing financial loss or property, false accounting. So corruption has been defined in broad terms by the Ugandan Anti-Corruption Act. So, ladies and gentlemen, we should all be asking, right? Because you see, corruption became very high for us. We have witnessed corruption from 1986 when NRM came to power up to date. At least I have not read corruption reports of the previous governments. I haven't. If it's there, send it to me. I have only read corruption reports during the NRM regime. So, ladies and gentlemen, as Ugandans, we first need to understand what corruption is. Even the majority of the people, by the way, they don't understand corruption. They just say corruption, corruption. But they don't understand the definition of corruption. So once we understand the definition of corruption, we can now start appreciating what has gone wrong in this country. So, fellow Ugandans, today I'm just introducing the concept of corruption. On Tuesday or Wednesday, I will discuss the legal and regulatory framework. That is next week. Then next week, on Thursday or Friday, I will provide the policy alternatives. I have a number of policy alternatives on how corruption can be tackled in this country. And this is the policies which I'm going to take to Ugandans. I will tell them it is our responsibility. People really need to understand. Ugandans, I am begging you, you must understand that because of corruption, you are not getting drugs in the hospital. If there's too much corruption, it means you can't get drugs and services in the hospital. If there's too much corruption, it means poverty will increase, because the money meant to fight poverty will be stolen by those who are in charge of providing that money to the poor people. Ugandans, you must understand, if there is too much corruption, schools are not going to receive grants, and the children of the poor are not going to get to higher education because of corruption. So it is upon the responsibility of leaders, those who are aspiring for public offices, to make Ugandans understand the consequences of corruption. That it is because of corruption that this country has sunk so deep low. And it is high time for all of us to stand up against corruption. See you on Tuesday. Click the link in the YouTube and watch. For God and my country. Amen.